Okay, in this session we're going to look at the Andalusian Cadence that we've been discussing a bit in the forum, and we're going to look at it from the perspective of the major key. We've been looking at the progression as A minor to G major to F major to E7 back to the top, or A minor, G, F, E. So we're going to look at it from the perspective of the major key, which will be C. In other words, all of the chords are found in the key of C with the exception of the E7th, and we'll look at that in just a second. Noting that the C is not even played. Okay, so Rubio looked at it from that perspective, and in that perspective, from the standpoint of C, the A minor is the sixth chord. Okay, now you can take the C and go up to the sixth degree of the scale, or La, however you want to think of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. The other way is to go down a minor third backwards. C, this would be the 1, 7, 6. There it is. That's actually easier in a lot of ways. Here's a C chord in a G form. You just drop down to the minor third. There you have it. Now you put a minor chord on that, and you drop a whole step, put a major chord, whole step, major chord, drop a half step with a dominant, turns it all around again to go right back through the progression. Okay, that's one way to go. You could go a lot of different ways through it. Remember that in the inversions, perfect intervals, the fourths and the fifths invert to perfect intervals. A tritone inverts to a tritone, and thirds and sixths, major sixths invert to minor thirds, and minor sixths invert to major thirds, and the same way with the seconds and sevenths. We did a session on that, so if you need to, you might go back and look at that if the inversions are a little fuzzy for you, or if you've not had any exposure to them. Okay. And we're going to have to talk about a few concepts that we'll explore in more detail in future sessions. Okay, and one of them is looking at this E7. Now, we've been through all the 7 tones in the major scale. We've built triads on them. We built 7 chords, so we know what the thirds, the fifths, and the sevenths of each one of those look like, how they sound like. Okay, and one of the observations made was, well, in the key of C, the 1 chord is C, the 2 chord is D minor, and the 3 chord, the E, is a minor, or a minor 7, and that's true. But in the Andalusian Cadence, it's played major or dominant, not minor. Okay, and the reason it's doing that is because the G sharp, by raising the third, the minor third, the G, to the G sharp, now we have a leading tone that leads us right back to the A, and we can go through it again. Okay, the other description of this chord would be a secondary dominant. Now, you've heard that term thrown around a little bit, and we're going to look at it extremely briefly here and come back and look at it in more detail later. But very simply put, we know that in any major key there is one dominant, the 5 chord. So in the key of C, the dominant is G. Okay, we know what a dominant is. 1, major thirds, fifth, flatted 7, or minor 7 gives us a dominant chord. Now, you can play a dominant chord in front of all of the rest of the chords in the major scale. You can set them up, so to speak, by playing their 5 chord. So let's say that you wanted to go to the E minor. Well, one way to go to E minor would be to play its secondary dominant, which is B7. As soon as you play that, now you tone to come into the E, or E7, either way. But notice that you've temporarily gone out of the key, in a sense, because what is the 7 chord in the key of C? Well, it's a minor 7 flat 5, not a dominant. So this B now is acting as a secondary dominant. It's sort of functioning diatonically within the key, but it's not native to the key because it has a D sharp in it and not a D natural. Okay. Same thing, let's say the 2 chord, the D minor. You could come into the 2 chord through an A dominant, okay, to set it up. Let's look at that little progression. You could even make a regression out of what we just did. B7 to E, A7 to D, G7 to C. Okay. Now they're called secondary dominants because the primary dominant is already spoken for. That's the dominant built on the 5th degree of the scale, the G. So that's why they're called secondary. Now let's say you wanted to get to the 6th chord, A minor. Well, you could play its dominant, which would be E, any way you wanted to. E, E7, here's the 7th, here's the 3rd, here's the 5th. 5th is doubled there with an open string, and the root is doubled on the outside. Okay? A minor. And see that E7 now to A minor is exactly what's happening at the end of the progression. It's using that secondary dominant to come back up and cycle it back to set it up to go all over again. So A minor, G, F, E7, secondary dominant of the A minor. Now we know all the 7th chords as well in the key of C, so you can expand it, the progression out to 7th chords, although a lot of times it's just played with the triads, but nothing wrong with fleshing it out. So what's A minor? Well, we know it's an A minor 7th, would be the 6th chord in the key of A minor. I mean the key of C, excuse me, C major. G is a dominant, okay, I hit a wrong note, and F is a major 7th, okay, or this way, or any way you want to play it, and E is a dominant, okay, we're playing it as a dominant, secondary dominant into the A minor, so you don't have to play them just as a triad. You can play them and flesh them out into their 7th parts. And sometimes they'll even be altered. A common way is the F is oftentimes played as a dominant. So you might hear something like A minor, G13, F13, A7, E7 or E7 flat 9 to set up the A minor. Okay, so that is the first part with a little sidetrack into the secondary dominant, and we'll come back and keep looking at that in even more perspectives.